Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you once again at 9 p.m. at PTV WORLD, bringing you issues from around the world and within our country as well. As the year ends, we see that there is a lot of speculation going on in the country with regards to the political scenario, and there is a lot of uncertainty in the minds of the people as to what is going to happen. We are, of course, here to explore that and try to figure out whether there is actually something that's going to happen or not, and what sort of talk is going on, what are the real issues, what really needs to be discussed, and who means what when they talk. There's, of course, a lot that needs to be talked about with reference to the opposition and their stance. We've discussed that in detail before as well. We keep hearing these stances from the opposition parties regarding their efforts to topple the current government, regarding a mass campaign that they want to start to oust the PTI government. And of course, these statements have come and gone in the past as well. Whether or not the renewed statements that we see from the PMLN, from the PPP, from the JUIF have any real value or not, we're going to look at that in further detail. And then, of course, also explore the issue of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's return to the country, who has gone to London, of course, with the court's permission for medical help, and did not return to the country after that. What really is being discussed? What is the truth in terms of what is going on with reference to meetings or deals that are being conducted? What sort of issues actually remain in terms of moving forward by the government? Also, how to dispel and talk about the kind of perspectives that a lot of people share with reference to our economy and the problems that are being faced by the masses. So we're going to look at all of these issues together and try and understand what the political situation of the country currently is and what do we think is going to happen in the near future. We are also going to be taking a look at the situation in India. Whenever we talk about the Indian regime, we of course talk about the propaganda campaign that has been going on in the country for quite some time now. There have been so many instances where the coordinated efforts done in this regard are being spoken about, are being revealed. They have been disclosed by EU Disinformation as well. And of course, Pakistan has also talked about so many of the efforts that the Indian regime has been doing with reference to Pakistan. This, of course, is a problem that is not restricted to India. We see these instances being used in different parts of the world as well by different governments and regimes. And we are going to try and explore the nuances of this particular issue and what sort of aspects need to be dealt with, taken a look at when we talk about resolving these issues. So it's not restricted to whatever is happening in India at the moment, but an overall approach as to how to fight the menace of fake news and propaganda campaigns that are going around in the country. And then, of course, with special reference to what India has been doing and Pakistan-India's relations and the future that these relations hold in the next year. All of this is going to be discussed in the debate today with, of course, Mr. Farrukh, Pitafi and Raja Faisal, as always, who are part of our show. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. We're also going to be joined by experts online, and I'll introduce them as and when they have joined us in the debate. We have with us two very respected honorable guests. We have M&A PTI, Ms. Ghazala Sefi. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us today. And we also have a PPP leader, Mr. Maqbool. Thank you very much for being with us in the debate. Of course, the situation that is going on currently at the moment in Pakistan with regards to the political scenario is an important one to discuss, because we want the people of Pakistan to be able to understand the truth, to be able to dissect the information that they're receiving from different sources, and to allow them to be able to think freely and understand what the situation is. And of course, it's our responsibility to bring forward what really is happening. When we speak about the current situation with regards to what is going on in terms of the opposition stance of working towards an effort to oust the current government, I'd like to start with you, Mr. Nadir. When we see these stances coming in the past as well, we don't really see any concrete effort, and we don't really see a concrete basis of this effort as well. In the current scenario, when you see these statements coming out from the PPP, the JUIF and the PMLN, what do you make of them? Are we really going to see some sort of effort which is coordinated in the opposition parties, and on what grounds?
I will not agree with you the fact that there hasn't been any effort. Pakistan People's Party has been very active as an opposition party, and we've been protesting against PTI's failed policies, the high inflation rates, and the failure of the government to provide any relief to the masses. And we've done it all over the country, not only in Sindh, but in Gilgit-Baltistan, in KPK, in Punjab, and in Balochistan, Quetta very recently as well. There has been some disagreements between the opposition parties. I will agree with you over there, but disagreements between parties is something very natural because obviously each party has its own manifesto, its own modus operandi. But we're very hopeful that in the next couple of weeks, those misunderstandings will be made very distant and the parties will come together, because right now the time is optimal for the opposition parties to come out on the streets as one unit, because the masses will support such efforts. The masses right now are so frustrated with the government because obviously right now there's no gas in the country. People cannot cook, let alone 3 meals, but not even one meal a day. And when they leave homes in the morning, they leave empty stomach. When they come back in the evening, they cannot cook dinner, and everybody's blaming the government, which they should, because when the minister is asked on national media why there is no gas in the country, he comes up with all the excuses in the world, but with no
Right. Let me also
reason.
include Ms. Ghazala in the conversation. Is the picture that is being painted at the moment the reality? Is this what's actually happening in the country? And do you think that the opposition parties seem to have the support of the masses, as Mr. Nadir is saying?
Well, Mr. Nadir is pointing out on certain issues which we have experienced in previous winters also when they had their regime as well. But then they forget about it, and once they're in the government, they have another excuse or story to tell. But once they're out in the opposition, they have some other stories. But the thing is, yes, there is an issue with the gas, and there is a larger demand than the supply, and that has been taken care of in a lot of areas. A lot of areas did suffer because, as it is, the gas supply cannot increase according to the demand, because people cannot, and you see there is a lot of mix between the commercial use of gas also by the domestic users. So there is an issue, and which is being resolved, and it will be resolved very soon within this winter and within this month probably. The other thing is that why they're beating the drum of high prices of commodities and otherwise. Um, they have been instrumental in bringing Pakistan to this level of difficulty. And then there was COVID and other things. Pakistan is working hard to get rid of the economic burdens that it has already had. A lot of Pakistanis who live abroad have helped Pakistan in maintaining a level which allows people to have this kind of life, because otherwise what PML and government had left Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf did
Ma'am,
was a real economic trauma, I would say. Economically, we were in a position. I'm sorry, is anybody speaking? I can't
yeah,
hear.
ma'am, as we know that we are of course talking about the energy crisis. Energy crisis is a
I'm
crisis which is being faced by almost all of the countries of the region. I just wanted to know, earlier, Brother Gabol, he was obviously talking about that people are facing the energy crisis in Pakistan. Could you please highlight when PPP was ruling over Pakistan, what was the scenario, what was the energy crisis at that time? Because they keep on highlighting of the current government, and we know that current government is doing every effort to meet the challenges related to the energy crisis. Could you please highlight how they performed during their government?
Well, during their time also, there was a lack of, and they always say that with the 18th Amendment, they own sin, and they're always complaining that a lot of gas is distributed and is available in sin, and yet they do not get their share. The thing is that the gas which is found in sin, most of the areas, is not sufficient enough to even cover up the demands of their area also, and in their timing they had immense crisis of gas at the time when there was this People's Party government. And even during PMLN government, there was a huge crisis. People were out on the streets with their utensils. There was no gas at that point also. So generally, in a generalized statement, I would say that Pakistan has had this power crisis since a very long time, and PTI government is taking up this challenge and trying to help the people as much as it can. But wherever there is a shortage and there is a supply which is not sufficient, obviously people would have difficulty. But this can't be the reason for People's Party to come out on street and let the people. They haven't done anything in Sindh as such. You can go in the interior of Sindh. Interior of Sindh is deprived of any facility that you can think of. There is no water, there is no gas, there is no road. They haven't done anything as such, though they are the custodian of Sindh. So they should
Right,
talk
Mr.
about
Nadir, I'll
Sindh.
give
Going
you
to
the
Gilgit-Baltistan will not solve their problem.
Yes, Mr. Nadir, I'll give you the opportunity to respond to that as well. But adding to that, please also help us understand what really is the plan for next year. And the 5th of January seems to be counted as an important date. And there seems to be something that the PPP wants to be doing. What exactly is that?
Are you asking me this question?
No, Mr. Nadir.
Mr. Nadir.
Can you please repeat the question? Because I thought it was from the MNA side.
Sure. I was talking about the 5th of January, which Bilawal Bhutto spoke about, and then the kind of efforts that the PPP plans to be making with regards to ousting the government. What exactly do you have in mind?
Well, Chairman Saab has called for a CEC meeting and a very high-level party leadership meeting, and Zardari Saab had already mentioned last week that we have full plans to encamp in Lahore and stay there, and maybe from there we might even move to Islamabad. But I think the message about Lahore is concerning the fact that the Punjab government is very weak right now. And if we start a no-confidence movement from Punjab and get rid of PTI government in Punjab, then the PTI government in the federation will be much easier. So I think that's what they're referring to. And we only need help of a few MPs in Punjab. And then again in Islamabad, we only need about 10 MNAs to not go with the government and go with the opposition. And it should be very, very simple, very easy, because right now even MNAs from within PTI and MPs from within PTI, they're very frustrated at their own government's performance because they cannot face their voters. Now, Ms. Sefi is lucky, she's on a reserve seat, she doesn't have to face any voters, she doesn't have a constituency. But I have a lot of friends from within PTI, and they tell me behind closed doors, off the record, that they feel very embarrassed when they go into their constituencies, because when their people ask them what the government is doing with regards to inflation, with regards to poverty, with regards to one of the highest unemployment rates Pakistan has ever seen, then the MNAs and the MPs, they have no answer, because for 3.5 years their narrative was, oh, it's because of Nawaz Sharif, it's because of Zardari. But now people don't buy that. People are simply asking that we don't care what Zardari did, we don't care what Nawaz Sharif did, we voted for you because you promised to bring change. So where is that change? And there's only a year and
let's also explore this further a bit. Farrukh, when we hear Mr. Nadir speaking, it seems like the opposition has it all sorted out and it's very simple to go ahead and oust the government. Is that so?
Because he actually brought up an energy crisis, and it seems that my brother here also seems to agree that a lot is happening. I think there are two energy crises in this country. One is, the energy that was talked about. The other is within the political circles. And I don't mean only the opposition. I think even the government's political organization needs a lot of work. At this moment, politicians are not actually reaching out to the people of Pakistan, as in to listen rather than to talk to them, right? And regarding what Gabol Sahab earlier said, that political parties are very active. I mean, I these days also have very active dreams, but they are dreams. I don't actually do much about those things, right? Allow me a couple of minutes just to actually clear the air. Before I actually, further pile on political parties, let me first put my own profession on the mat. I think that we media people are not giving the people of Pakistan the kind of tools that were needed, the critical thinking tools which were needed to do something. It seems like media, because now it has 24/7 coverage, we are under the impression that the moment we stop talking, people will start thinking. So I will never shut up, right? And that has been happening, and that actually depresses me, because for past 3-4 days, will he come back? Will Nawaz Sharif come back? Won't he come back? And then what else are we talking about? That affidavit and this, that, the other thing. With due respect, it is immaterial. People want focus on their own interest. Are we actually debating those things? What structural changes are going to take place? Not at all, right? One example, yesterday Mohtarma Benazir, and why media might be playing ball with certain political parties. Yesterday was Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto's 14th birthday, right? Her death anniversary. And while there were speeches made at the ancestral home, amazingly, certain media houses were covering it less. And what were they paying attention to? Mariam Nawaz's tweet about Benazir Bhutto, right? That actually tells you that there is some inherent bias, and that is obnoxious, that is offensive. When we were taught media studies and reporting, we were told that you have to first start with the micro picture, with one example, and then you actually go to the macro picture. And my issue is theoretical. My theoretical issue is that Huntington used to say that if you have actually voted out more than two governments through the due process, then you become a democracy. Yeah, that is true, but nobody seems to be interested in that. For 5 years, I kept on saying that People's Party should actually complete its term. I was very good at that time. When PMLN was there, I kept on arguing for the same thing. But today, the very same parties ask us to actually either say that the government is going tomorrow, or otherwise you lose your democratic credentials. I'm sorry, that kind of tribalism is not what I'm about, right?
Right.
Nobody should be. At this moment, the fact remains that you have to have more than one political party, and that's great if People's Party, PMLN and PTI fight among themselves, but keep it civil. At this moment, that doesn't seem to be happening. Either they're not civil, what happens then is they actually cut each other down, and then Maulana Fazlur Rahman and TLP and other parties start getting around. That shouldn't be the case. Play smart and wait for your turn. This is my humble submission.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
Sana, I just wanted to highlight something that, world over, what we see is whenever there is a time for election, the coming up election, the political parties, the genuine political parties, they talk about their manifestos. And what we see here is that the manifesto of People's Party, of course, it was obviously bashed twice in province of Punjab. And now, rather than, refreshing their manifesto and highlighting their manifesto, what they are doing is they're trying to obviously oust the government of Punjab. And if we talk about PMLN, they have nothing in their manifesto basket, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to cash in on the slogans, as they always used to have, that they are some kind of having a deal, so to people who are going away from them for their stance, they can come back and join them again. And that's what the politics is all
Allow
about.
me just
Yes.
one thing. Faisal, but is it not true of all political parties who reads the manifesto after you are elected into the parliament?
Exactly.
Ms. Ghazala, when we talk about the return of Nawaz Sharif, is it as immaterial as we were saying earlier in terms of what perhaps the people of the country want to know, or even when the government actually takes notice of this?
Well, coming back of Nawaz Sharif would be good for the country. If he's coming back, then he'll have to face the trial. And as told earlier, he won't get an NRO. And if there is some kind of an agreement somewhere which has been said through different media persons, so I don't see that there is any way, like the Prime Minister said, that if he is given freedom to move around after being convicted, then obviously all the jails should be open for the rest of the people to come out.
Right.
So we don't see him coming soon, but yes, if he's coming, then he'll have to face, he has to go back to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
But Mr. Nadir, my last question to you, since we're running out of the time for this segment, would be with regards to the continuation of democracy, which seems to be the priority of all the political parties. But when we see the PPP talking about them being the champions of democracy and then taking undemocratic steps with reference to not towards ousting the government or not letting the government complete its term, isn't this something that's contradictory?
There is nothing undemocratic about refraining the government from completing its tenure. In fact, Mr. Imran Khan, who likes to quote the fact that he's a champion of the West, he should know that in the West it's very common that if the government cannot perform, then there's an in-house change, and the opposition parties can vote in the form of a no confidence motion and get rid of the prime minister. So what's undemocratic about that? Bilawal Saab has always said that we want to bring a change to the house.
Mostly political parties are talking about fresh elections.
Right.
That is cutting the term of the parliament into half.
No, there is no fresh elections. The first step is always to bring in a no confidence vote. And after a no confidence vote, if the opposition parties can show their strength and form the government, the first priority is that they form the government. If no parties or no groups can show a clear majority, that's when the parliament is dissolved. And after that, there is a fresh election. So there's a process, and we're talking about the process. We never said that we want to hijack the political system or the democratic system. Bilawal Saab made it clear yesterday in Larkana that we have offers, but we do not want to take any offers.
I respect what you're saying. The question is, why do you then need a long march? Why not do it in the parliament?
True.
Well, because obviously, we need to show our strength on the streets first and put the government under pressure so that they actually do allow such a movement to be tabled in the assembly. Because right now what the government does is they try to buy their allies in the, for example, MQM, for example, Balochistan Awami Party, they use different tactics to pressurize their allies. PTI itself does not have the numbers and they rely on their allies, and we need to first of all make sure that the allies are free from any pressure. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there's I believe about 25 to 30 MNAs within PTI who do not want to stay with PTI anymore, and it's very clear that a couple of the MNAs are very vocal against PTI's policies and PTI's failure to deliver to the government. So that's what we're counting on.
Could you name some, please?
Well, I don't want to put anyone under trouble right now, and when the right time comes, everybody will find out.
But you don't need, frankly, you don't need street power to actually do that. You can do it in the parliament, right?
But street power is needed for local body elections, I guess.
Let me also speak to Ms. Ghazala before we conclude. Seems like you wanted to add something. I think we have lost our contact with Ms. Ghazala. Thank you very much for being with us. Ms. Ghazala Sefi was with us, and Mr. Nadir Kabul, talking about the current situation, of course, the political scenario that is going on in the country. And it's very important to understand what exactly is going on at the moment. And like Farrukh, you were saying at the moment, with regards to the show of power, it still seems as if the kind of process that Mr. Nadir was talking about is not really what's being stressed.
Here's something very funny that is going on with these two political parties. They seem to be competing for the same space because it seems that in Punjab, PTI and People's Party both keep on struggling, right, Sana? And that might be because of a couple of reasons. You don't actually seek the vote of the people and then declare that you are going to divide the province into three or two portions, right? This has been happening. The only party which did not do it is PMLN, and that's why the GTA road actually sticks with that party. Similarly, when you talk about media bias and economics, both have actually shown that they have been weak in those areas, right? But frankly, I don't know which party is going to gain steam. But at this moment, it seems that all three major parties might be losing if Maulanas keep on winning in the elections.
Faisal,
and
you
they
wanted
should
to
be focusing on
add
that.
something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. As Farrukh earlier, highlighted very well that there are certain things that we, being the media people, being the journalists, we need to look into ourselves as well. There are few people in our ranks who are, persistingly promoting the fake news, in the internal fake news I want to talk about. What they do is, for certain political parties, they keep on highlighting certain stories that had nothing to do with the Pakistan politics. It's like, somebody is in talks with the institutions, or they are talking with the right people, and now they
Right.
will be getting a deal. There is no such thing. I mean, they
But
are
my
the
question
very,
would be,
these political parties are the very political parties who
Sure.
always claimed that the institutions should always stay away from the politics, and they are the ones who are actually giving these kind of fake news. And all of these journalists, the fake news peddlers, they are the ones who are tweeting about it.
Right, and shouldn't we also perhaps explore, when we're talking about the responsibility of the media, the fact that the people who are actually consuming this sort of material need to also look for other options, or try and
How?
want to view other things? When we talk about what the media does and what it sort of showcases, isn't this something that sort of the argument is given that sells, or what people want, and they want to be able to hear some sort of drama, some sort of sensationalizing news? Is it a blame that's not fair to put on the public?
That's a very good question. I don't know whether we are going to soon start our segment, but I
Quickly,
suggest there is this manipulation of media rating system. People's meter or a media logic is a monopoly, right? And it works very closely with what you call PBA. So whatever they are shoving down the people's throat becomes the majority stakeholder and becomes the approved thing.
Exactly.
We'll have this debate later in another program because it is a very good discussion. But
We could continue the discussion with our next segment as well, with reference to
Fake
what is
news.
going on in India, and the this problem of fake news that of course grips all over the world. Different parts, different people, different regimes have employed these tactics, and we need to be able to sort of understand how to tackle them. For this segment, we have been joined by two very respected guests. Mr. Hamid Khan, who's a senior analyst, has also joined us, and who's also been joined by Rohit Sharma, who's an Indian journalist and a regular on our show. Thank you very much for being with us on the debate. When we talk about the issue of fake news and propaganda campaigns, first let me try and understand this menace, the concept, the problems with regards to how to deal with it, what sort of layers it has, so that when we try and resolve the issue, we actually know the issue as well. Mr. Hamid Khan, if you could shed some light on what exactly is the problem with fake news, why is it so hard to deal with?
Thank you very much, Sana. I mean, if you look into the latest, fifth generation warfares, the propaganda is the biggest tool which has been used to destabilize many countries. But Pakistan is one of the biggest victim and the target from India and the enemies of Pakistan to destabilize Pakistan through this media warfare, through this media propaganda. And we always say that there are three types of propaganda: white propaganda, gray propaganda, and black propaganda. And unfortunately, I would say that our enemy, like countries like India and other enemies, they are using all three propaganda types against Pakistan, where the state is involved doing the propaganda. The funding is paid by the state. On top of it, they are misguiding the organizations like United Nations, European Union, and it can cause any big conflict in the region, and it can affect the whole world. We have seen the examples during the Afghan conflict. We have seen the examples during the standoff between Iran and Saudi Arabia and America. We have seen the propaganda of China and India. When the Indian fake news and everybody, they started making so many different claims. And this is the time when I always emphasize that now there is a time of world legislation required to have a legislation against fake news, same like as a war crime, because it can erupt any wars anytime because of these fake news. So why the world community is not taking it seriously, that this fake news thing, as we have a classic example of within last 3-4 months what was happening in Afghanistan. They were showing a video game clips claiming this is Pakistan army. Then on top of it, they are showing film star and movie stars as the soldiers and the commandos from Pakistan. Then there was a complete report from European Disinfo Lab exposing over 500 media houses operated by Indian RAW, by Indian government. Srivastav group is involved, other group is involved. They were having functions and events organized in United Nations, which were absolutely baseless, fake.
Right, absolutely, Mr. Hamid. You're absolutely right. Of course, these measures have been highlighted time and again, and and the entire world knows about them as well. But before we move on to these instances and measures taken by India, let's first talk about the responsibility as a journalist to be able to give information which is correct and authentic. Rohit, you of course are also part of this fraternity, and it's important that we of course understand that this is something that is essential to our jobs, and I'm sure you are aware of that, and you are a responsible journalist. What sort of steps do you think that media in India, or journalists in India, or the government in India actually takes in terms of ensuring that the news that they're giving out to their public is not fake?
Sanaji, frankly speaking, being a responsible journalist, I also expect responsible journalism from the side of Pakistan. Now, coming to the fact, there's somebody speaking from the back. I can hear something. Now, coming back to the point. Yeah.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Hear some voice. Yeah. So, coming back to my friend Hamid, a very capable gentleman. I'm a friend of his for the past 1 year or so, and he speaks wonderful, but without facts. The fact is that India has been fooling UN and international community. What he said, I'll go back to the tweet of the Pakistani Prime Minister, where he tweeted a video from Bangladesh and called it India's UP, when Muslims were being killed in that tweet, in that video. Was it not fake news? I'm not talking about
I have not seen it. Honestly, we are just talking about the present news.
Hamid bhai, when you were speaking lies, okay. I could have disturbed you, right? Okay. Now, coming to the point, that I'm not talking about Srivastava group or Disinfo Lab or some private group. I'm talking about the Prime Minister of Pakistan. I'm talking about the officially designated and under an oath Prime Minister whom the UN recognizes and the international community recognizes. Another gentleman who's the chief of Pakistan, the head of Pakistan, is the President, Arif Alvi. He tweeted a video from your Muzaffarabad, that's the capital of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and claimed that was a video of Srinagar. That was also fake news, I think, right? And that was not from Srivastava Group, not from Disinfo Lab. These two, Srivastava Group, Disinfo Lab, these are private organizations. But President is the president of a country, and entire world's focus is on your country's president and prime minister.
Rohit, let me explain. Now, Rohit, let me explain it for you. You know, you've mentioned about the tweets, and we all know that them tweets later on, of course, when they came to know that the footages which were being shown in them tweets.
All right. Let him finish, Faisal. He wants to say something.
Can I reply?
My answer is not complete. Now, going back to that, in the UN, in the United Nations, Maliha Lodi showed a photograph, and that photograph was of a girl from Palestine,
Gaza,
or Syria, and claimed that this is from Kashmir. What is this? Why do you always cry Srivastava Group when your officials, your government officially is lying? I mean, who is spreading disinfo and who is spreading false news, fake news?
What about? Can I reply?
Yeah, but Rohit, let me tell you. You know, the news was right, but of course the footage or the picture you are highlighting, it was the odd one, the other one. We accept it, and then later on, of course, they said yes, it was the wrong video, but the news was right. News wasn't challenged by anyone throughout the world.
And by the
all of the news channels from BBC and to every channel of India. I think India may be speculating, but the other channels of the world, they accepted it. What I wanted to know, the institutions like Srivastava Group and all of these, the ones you're claiming that they are the private institutions, who is funding them? Could you please tell me who is funding them? Because it is not the one time or two time, it's thrice that it has been deciphered by the international organizations. We didn't ask them to do it. They themselves did it. EU Disinfo Lab, then Indian Chronicles, then elsewhere. Everyone is doing that. They are doing it by themselves. And they are actually, taking all of these organizations back to the government of India. The government of India is behind it. They are claiming it. I'm not claiming it. What would you say about it?
And allow me to add to this question. Rohit, when we were talking about fake news, essentially we were talking about journalism. I understand in social media accidents happen, people tweet or show wrong pictures and then there's a retraction.
Exactly.
But are you actually implying that journalism and politicians are the same thing, and that journalism should stop its principles just because a politician made some kind of error?
I can say one more thing. Allow me to say a
Go
minute.
on.
Yes, Mr. Hamid.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would say to Rohit that he needs to differentiate between a human error and an organized campaign and crime.
Right.
One thing. Secondly, he needs to understand that the incidents he is mentioning, I would like to remind him when Indian Air Force on their annual parade showed Pakistani Air Force pilots in their screens while Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was present in that ceremony. What about that? We consider it as a human error. Then India did two times, they showed Pakistan's Lahore Data Sahab as their Ajmer Sharif festival, and they're showing that people are doing this and that. So there is some kind of human error as well. And there is a difference between organized crime when you're using the platforms like United Nations, European Union, and taking the fake member of parliaments to the tour of Srinagar and meeting them with Prime Minister Narendra Modi as the member of parliament. This is called organized fake propaganda. That is the difference between an organized fake propaganda and a human error. I am not defending anything. I am just explaining. And as Mr. Pitafi said, the being responsible journalists, at least we should convince and agreed on one point that spreading the fake information has to be accountable. Now this is the time when Indian propaganda and Indian media has lost all its credibility. I always say that Indian credibility is zero when it comes to the news verification. Pakistani channels are more credible in terms of international channels are mentioning whether BBC, CNN or Fox News. They mention Pakistani source of information, PTV and other channels, but they do not mention as their resource of information any Indian channel because of their zero credibility. That is what's happening to the
Rohit, I'll give you some time to respond to the three analysts who've asked you different questions and made their comments. A courtesy perhaps not extended to us on Indian media, but go ahead.
Now, what the gentleman said was that the news was right, but the video was fake. Frankly speaking, there was a news of a clash, right? The news of clash is always right because our media has covered it. But the fact remains that who has been killed, whether it is a Hindu or a Muslim or atrocity on a Muslim or on a Hindu, it is an internal matter. Then you're trying to spread fake news that by showing a video from Bangladesh or from your own country that this is the atrocity going on. There may be stone pelting and you are showing somebody killing with a knife, right? That was the difference. Now, this gentleman said that you have to differentiate between politicians and journalism. Sir, your president is a politician, sack him. Your prime minister is a politician, sack him. If you cannot have a responsible president and prime minister, what is the credibility of the country as a whole?
Clarify one thing. Let me just ask you, were they retracted the story or not?
Exactly.
The problem with your coverage is that you misreport, your media does, and then you never retract. Can you tell me that F-16 was shot down in 2019 or not?
When you were speaking, I was quiet. When you were
Sir,
speaking,
I
I was
didn't
quiet.
speak. I kept on listening
no,
to you.
no,
I
no.
just asked a single question, maximum 2
No,
sentences.
no, I have to give
And you
answer to
haven't
everybody.
actually answered my question.
Listen. You can't
So I
hijack the
have to
show.
seek
You can't
clarification
hijack
from
the
you,
debate.
right?
I will not allow that. I'm telling you one thing. Now,
Yeah, you don't seem to allow anything on your media, and
Minister,
you will not
your
allow anything
Prime-
on our media as well.
your
Thank you
Prime-
very much.
Your
I
Prime
think that
Minister
is a
and
sign of a
President,
great democracy in the world.
They have a social, they have an international responsibility. Your,
Rohit,
your
I
enterprise
am
to fuel, they
saying
have
that
an
the
international
stories that you were
responsibility.
referring to
You
were
cannot call them-
retracted.
you
Did
cannot
you
call them
retract
mere
any story
politicians.
on your media?
If they cannot behave as dignitaries, let them
Rohit, it's a
resign.
follow-up
They
question.
can-
Rohit.
Please answer that.
Rohit,
I'm
would you
answering.
allow me?
I'm answering. Listen, the problem is when I am answering, your guests do not allow me to speak. Now,
It's a follow-up
coming to this
question,
point,
Rohit. You
Rohit,
are
it
allowed
was
to
a
speak
follow-up
as well.
question.
You are
Please go
Rohit.
ahead.
getting more time
Rohit,
than I
let
get
me-
entire in the program on Indian media. I get 40
Rohit,
seconds to 1
but
minute.
then-
Rohit and Hamid,
No,
let me tell you a
The
story.
reason is I am
I'm
explaining you
I
that
have-
you
I
need to
have-
explain
Rohit,
yourself.
Rohit and
just a
Hamid.
minute.
Rather than going back
Rohit sahab,
or
no,
not
and
saying
Hamid sahab,
anything.
with due
You
respect,
come to the
Rohit
point.
sahab,
That's all I
hang
want.
on, hang on.
Ahmed bhai,
I am
Ahmed bhai,
just
Ahmed-
seeking clarification from you. You said something and you keep on obfuscating things. I am just seeking an answer and clarity
All
about
right.
what you are trying to answer me. I'm asking you.
Let's hear the clarification.
Yeah. With due respect, allow me to just qualify what I'm saying. I'm asking, did you retract anything, including the F-16 story?
Nothing.
Yes. A problem is that I have to give answers to three journalists from Pakistan. So I need 3 times the time. Secondly, whenever I start speaking, you
No,
people
there's a new
intervene.
equation.
Let me answer. Let me complete my answer. Then you can speak. There's no problem, right? Now coming to, I'll talk about F-16 as well. Who retracted the statement in the case of F-16? Was it not your Prime Minister? Just go through his statements. Just go to the statements of your DG ISPR. They said 2 planes have crashed, 2 pilots are injured, and that was 10 o'clock in the morning
Not
when
ours.
they said 2 planes have crashed.
Not
Just a minute,
ours,
just a minute.
yours.
Do not intervene.
Rohit, he was
Do not
talking about
intervene.
yours.
Do not- Please, do not disturb. Please do not disturb. Now, and then
No,
after that,
can't we have a
your
conversation?
your DG ISPR tweeted that 1 pilot has died. And at 6 p.m. they said, no, only 1 plane crashed and 1 pilot is with us. Who retracted and who tried to hide up the crash of F-16? Why were you trying to hide it? Why were
If
who
you
was the
wanted
second
to
pilot?
humiliate more
Rohit,
Let's
Rohit,
hear
we're
from
not
Mr.
hiding.
Hamid.
Rohit, no.
Let's hear from Mr. Hamid.
Let me tell them a story.
I am just saying one thing.
Rohit, no, Hamid and Rohit, if you could allow me just 1 minute. Rohit and Hamid, there is a story, you must have heard about it. There was this guy who always used to come from the jungle, and he used to be shouting at everyone, there's a lion in the jungle, there's a lion in the jungle. And people from the jungle, people from the village, they used to go to jungle and find nothing in there. Then one day, it was actually a lion out there, and he kept on shouting and nobody went there. I think, Rohit, this is what is going to happen. You know, your country is constantly giving the fake news, and I think the day you start giving a right news, nobody would be trusting you.
Let's
And
hear
this is going
from
to happen.
Mr. Hamid. He's
And
being
very humbly,
patient.
very quickly,
Yes.
before you go to Hamid Saab,
1 minute.
Rohit Saab, with due respect, you just qualified that the government retracted its statement.
Exactly.
That was fog of war, in which you do misreport. But then there was a correction. You have never corrected your stories. Hamid Saab, over to you.
I'll come back to you,
If we
Rohit.
say-
Let me just quickly
Rohit,
let
we
Hamid
say-
have
Your
comments.
government
Rohit,
officials, your dignitaries
Rohit,
lied.
Rohit,
I've
Rohit,
given you
it's
4
not
examples.
about lying.
One
No,
more
Rohit.
example.
Rohit,
One
not
more
about
example.
Rohit, please.
I'll tell you one
One
thing.
more example of
Rohit.
fake news. I'll tell you. Your president said there is no army in Kargil. Later on, you accepted. That was you have always.
Let me hear
Rohit,
from
come
Mr.
on.
Hamid as well. Let me
Come on,
hear from
Rohit.
Mr. Hamid
You
quickly,
have
please.
no idea
Yes.
how to differentiate between a war policy and a journalism. One thing.
Exactly.
Secondly, if
No,
we save,
no,
if
you
we
cannot.
save, listen,
Acha,
listen. Can you hear me
is
for
it-
a minute?
is-
Secondly,
what is war
if you
policy?
want,
What is war
if
policy?
you, if
What
you,
is,
if you,
is it your written policy?
no, it is not a written policy. Try to understand.
Then
Try to
How
understand.
can you,
There is a timing.
how can
No.
you implement
Oh,
a
All right,
handwritten
Rohit,
policy?
let's
I
hear from
am
Mr. Hamid.
surprised how you understand. How do you do not understand the strategical policies and the journalism? You are thinking
Exactly.
journalist job is different than a DGISPR. Journalist job is to investigate the news before it goes out. Secondly, you are talking about the two, fighters, your planes down and everything. We try to save your face from the humiliation that you was humiliated enough with the one Abhinandan. We do not want to humiliate. If you want to accept it, okay, accept it. I am not. I mean, yeah, I say yeah. I am telling you, I slap you twice. And then I said, okay, yaar, consider it one slap. You want to say, no, I got it slapped twice. Okay, you accept it then. It is like we are saving your humiliation and you are saying that,
Now,
oh no,
now, I'll
accept it that I got
I'll
slapped
reply.
twice. I mean,
All right, Rohit,
surprised
quickly, please. You
what
have a
kind of
minute.
argument it is. Honestly,
Okay,
I'm
let's hear from
surprised.
Rohit now.
I'll reply. Hamid, I'll reply. I'll
Honestly.
reply. It is, according to Hamid, it is the job of a journalist to investigate. But it is
Yes.
not the job of the prime minister. Just be quiet. But it is not the job of a prime minister to
Can
investigate.
I tell you
whether
the
two
jokes
planes
of
have
your
crashed or
Modi
no,
when
no,
he
it
says
is not-
that that astronomy started, I don't want to start with the prime ministers. We are talking professional.
And Rohit,
Honestly
Rohit, the
speaking,
whole
if
idea
I
was that to
start
talk
telling
about-
you
Madam,
the jokes
When
of the
we
Modi
started talking about
in his
it, yes.
speeches,
It
you
is
will
my
be
turn
surprised.
to answer your,
Rohit, I
my-
just want you to talk on the professional
ma'am.
topic which we want.
Rohit,
to talk.
otherwise we'll
That's
start
the
talking
only
about
thing.
the masters in whole political science.
Yeah,
Sanaji.
yeah.
All
Entire
right.
political.
Entire political
All
science.
right,
We'll
Rohit,
we'll start talking
I
about-
don't want to. I don't want you to leave the show sulking. So just please finish your thought.
He will sulk in
As a
any case.
journalist,
Please finish your thought.
you only have to.
Listen.
Hamid, if you
I am
could
not
allow.
interested.
Let him finish, please.
I am-
Okay.
Yes.
I am not interested in this kind of a debate where you people speak and when I speak, you do not
Not
let
at
me
all.
speak.
Not at all. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Now, is it not the job of DGISPR to investigate what he is going to speak and what he is going to tweet, or not the job of the Prime Minister to investigate whether the news is correct or not? And secondly, if you are trying to say, this is all, is it rubbish? What Mr. Hamid speaking from London, not even Islamabad, he's speaking something rubbish on a national channel that Pakistan was trying to save our face. 2 planes crashed. Your prime minister said, why did he say that? Just sack him. He's trying to favor India. Why? In a war-like situation, why is he saving India? No, this is not. And
Rohit, the other
Thank
plane
you
we are
very
talking
much.
about, I actually hail from the area. The other plane we are talking about, it actually crashed somewhere in your own territory, your side territory, from
Let me-
the other side.
Yes.
Let me
You
quickly
know, and of
thank
course you would never talk
we're
about it.
almost out of time. Thank you very much, Rohit. Rohit, you will be on our show again, and we'll have ample time to discuss this. Quickly,
Rohit.
yes.
Just a minute.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
He said that the plane crashed in Indian side, but after the plane crash, our pilot found out that he's in India. He took a car and went to Pakistan and then went into a hospital in Pakistan and died there.
The second one I'm talking about, Rohit. Rohit, I'm talking about the second one.
Thank you very much,
Rohit,
Mr.
he is only
Sharma.
joshing. He is only
Unfortunately,
joshing
you
with
don't
you. With
even
due
have
respect.
that.
This is not a realistic, discussion anymore, because you actually keep on insisting about something else. With due respect, while you were talking about our Prime Minister, may I remind you what your Prime Minister did?
Exactly.
Your Prime Minister goes on national television and admits that he was instructing the air chief to actually take air cover to hide from the, radars.
Exactly.
Did anybody teach him any science?
All right, we
Nobody
will-
did.
Even
This
he
is-
talked about
Right. Faisal, we will have to continue this. To be continued, this show. Thank you very much, Mr. Rohit Sharma and Mr. Hamid Khan, for joining us. This discussion, of course, will never end. Unfortunately, Farrukh and Faisal, when somebody is denial, it's quite hard to convince them otherwise. So we're just going to be wasting our time and our minds. So let's end the show here. Stay tuned to PTV World and keep watching the debate. We'll be back tomorrow at 9.